Hello everyone and welcome back to Lords of Infinity. So in the last episode we managed to get into a little bit of actually managing our estates and working on some different things, but now we're going to actually get some news about what's going on in the rest of the kingdom, and apparently some things have happened. So let's return. The king has called the courts into session with the intent of maintaining the war taxes. More than that, rather than decreasing spending to the army, he has announced the formation of a military reform commission for the sake of not only strengthening the army, but perhaps even expanding its permanent establishment. The Duke of Wolfram and his supporters have publicly denounced the proposed royal budget. In an unprecedented move, they have presented their own, one which reputedly abolishes the war taxes, offers relief for the poor, and cuts spending on the army to almost nothing. Tensions are at an all-time high. There is talk of demonstrations, riots, even open rebellion. The unified kingdom is on the brink of chaos. Surely, as a lord of the courts, your place is in the middle of things so that you may have your say in the course which the realm is to take. You ought to be making preparations to leave for the capital immediately, shouldn't you? You may be needed in Atoria, but aren't you needed here as well? It would not be particularly difficult to appoint someone to look after the estate in your absence, but you would certainly not be able to have the same level of control through a proxy as you would directly. Any improvements you might wish to make to the estate would also almost certainly require more money and resources as well. It is perhaps surprising how insolently suppliers and contractors sometimes deal with the manager of an estate when its master is far away. Besides, maintaining a presence in the capital will certainly not be cheap. You will need to rent a townhouse, pay for the upkeep of a second set of servants, and deal with all the myriad expenses of living among the lights and perfumes of Atorian high society as well. Even if you should desire to return to the capital, you may well rapidly find yourself being unable to afford to stay unless you secure some other arrangement. Perhaps it would be better to remain at home. Oof. Yeah, so now you have to make the decision. This is tough. Because I mean, on the one hand, I feel like being in the capital, of course, you're going to have an effect on the politics and so on and so forth. But also, you might be able to get some useful alliances and stuff that may end up helping you out back at home. But like they did say, you can't really focus on things while you're at, while you're at home. Well, while you're away, that is. So that's going to be a bit of a pickle. The realm needs me. I must go to Atoria and make my voice heard. There is opportunity to be had in the capital, and I mean to seize it. Could do more good at home than in the city. Cortez politics seems a dangerous game, one I'd rather not play. I consider the matter more thoroughly. Think it all through. All right. So to go to Atoria or to remain at home. I actually think for right now, I am going to remain at home. I don't think anything is going to actually come of this right now. I may be wrong by that, and that may be a big miscalculation on my part. But I don't think anything is going to actually come of this right now. Things are still early. People are poking and prodding. It's the early games and so on and so forth. So I don't really want to jump into things right now because I want the full benefit of both sides, I guess you could say. So hopefully I can have the full benefit of both sides for right now. So I'll stay out of it. And I think I'll stay home and focus on trying to, at the very least, getting the roads up. If I can get the roads up and get the agriculture, as far as the farms go, started, then I feel like I'll be in a pretty good position to actually leave and do other things. And hopefully I can have some other encounters in the process that will help things out. So, I can do more good at home than in the city for now. It is tempting to go into the city, to have your voice heard in the courts, and to steer the course of the realm. But how much of a voice would you really have? As a lord of the courts, you are only one voice among 600, and as a poor baron with a meager estate, you would not particularly be a voice which others would consider worth listening to, unless you're appointed to that council. That would be pretty nice. No, if you are to do any good, it would be here on your estate, where your actions might directly benefit those who live under your protection. Atoria will take on without the presence of a single minor lord, but if things truly go to the bad in the days ahead, Runeberg will need its baron. You fold up your copy of the Gazette and set it down firmly on the table. Such matters ought to not concern you now. No, your place is here. Alright, in the end, your decision carries with it almost a sense of anticlimax. Of course, you were going to stay home after so many years away. What else were you going to do? For all the titles, powers, and dignities of your rank, you are still a simply country baron. The realm may be of need of men to guide it now, but you've already done your work. You had spent much of the best part of your life in service to crown and kingdom at war. Now it is time for other men to take up the task at peace. Your first responsibilities now are to your family, your tenants, and to your estate. Your father sat in the courts maybe 3 times in his entire life. Why should you be any different? Life goes on, the days pass, the rents are collected. The planting season continues as it did in your absence. And now we are in chapter 2, wherein the Lord of the Courts reckons with one of the many after effects, the war in Antar. Let's see what we have in our stats. So nothing has really changed so far. Debts are still the same. Yeah, the debt actually went up. So yeah, we need to do something about that, and we need to actually see some of these projects get started and hopefully reap the benefits of some of them at the very least. All right. Indeed, it is not until 2 weeks later that the routine of the estate is broken up with an arrival of a second courier. But this time, the intendancy man brings with him more than just back copies of the Gazette, but mail as well. First, there is a much abused missive, folded as precisely as if by a machine. Its thin material is smudged with soot, ink, and some strange stain which smells faintly of ammonia. The envelope bears no sender's address, but it does not need one, for the emblem of Gering, Gutierrez, and Truscott stamped on its face is all the identification you might need. Next comes an envelope of thick, expensive paper, folded with painstaking care, somewhat battered by its journey, and bearing the seal of House Wells. Lastly, there is a small profusion of notices from your associates, official correspondence from Atoria and Fernandad's court. Most importantly of all, there are updates from your bankers in Atoria, at last giving you the accurate accounting of your financial situation that you shall need if you intend to do any meaningful improvement of your estate. But that can wait. You have personal letters to go through first. I really do kind of want to jump into the Countess Wells first, but let's open the message from Gering, because that's the actual choice that we turned around and made. It was the only one we can make. Well, it was one of the only ones you can make. You can only make one choice. So, open the message from Gering. To be truthful, a great part of you had lost any hope of ever hearing from Edmund Gering again. It has been 5 years since the man had talked to you into making an investment in his concept for a new musket. He had been all enthusiasm then, chattering on about how such a weapon might revolutionize warfare entirely, yet you have heard little of his success or failure since. So naturally, it is with trepidation and no small amount of anticipation that you open the letter and read its contents. Lord Runeberg, I must apologize, my lord, for not having written sooner. Yeah, 5 years? Come on, man. The demands on my time are great. In between my work in advancing the project which you have so graciously invested in, and my regular duties as a partner in Gering, Gutierrez, and Truscott, I have little time to maintain any sort of correspondence. However, you will be happy to know that matters progress most satisfactorily. With the aid of the funds invested by yourself and other investors, I have been able to establish a small workshop for the construction and testing of experimental firearms. It was my hope that these forays would yield some manner of design worthy of further development. You will perhaps be pleased to know that one of your most promising prototypes involves an iteration of the system which you described to me during your meeting 5 years ago. Having proved itself relatively reliable in our most recent round of firing tests, we hope to develop it further, alongside several other promising prospects. Should things continue to progress at this current pace, we may see a model fit for production trials within 4 or 5 years. If Grenadier Square sees fit to adopt the resulting weapons for general issue, I have every confidence that you shall see your investment repaid before long. I remain your most obedient servant, So the project is moving forward after all, an encouraging sign. However, that final sentence is not quite as encouraging as Gearing no doubt intended for it to be. Given the current circumstances, you rather doubt that Grenadier Square would be willing to spend a fortune on a new and untested weapon when it must fight the Cortez for every last penny. You file the letter away with a sigh. Were you in Atoria, you would have perhaps been able to be of some use in convincing the Cortez to raise the necessary funds, but you are far from the Cortez chamber now, too far to make your voice heard. What now? Oh man, so if I was in the capital, I could have had an effect on that. Oof. So that's something to keep in mind going forward. So in my actual playthrough, I might actually end up going to the capital so I can have some type of voice in that matter. And see, it's stuff like that where I can actually help out a lot more, because if I can raise funds for certain things like that while I'm in the capital, I can pay off my debts, and then I can have much more money for improvements, so on and so forth. So whereas here, I can oversee the projects right then and there, but I probably won't be able to do too much because I won't have the money necessary. So, all right. Take a look at the letter from Countess Wells. It has been years since you last spoke with Lady Wells, not since the height of the war in Antar. She must be busy, of course. Last you had heard, she was still in Latoria, compiling an analysis of the war for Grenadier Square, a sequel to the report on Blagia which had first won her such acclaim and royal patronage. You pry open the wax seal carefully and unfold the letter. Now, unfortunately, I'm guessing it's not going to say anything about romance because I wasn't able to actually put that one on. Or can I? Nope, can't do anything about that. So, alright. My Lord Roomberg. First, I must offer my congratulations regarding your elevation. I have once heard it spoken that to run a noble estate is not so much different from running a squadron of cavalry. If that is the case, then I'm certain you shall perform as admirably as Lord Roomberg in peace as you did as an officer of dragoons in Antar. That being said, I hope you are enjoying the days of peace which your efforts have done so much to help win. To have the luxury of tranquility and leisure must be something of a relief after long years of life in the saddle. Alas, I fear that such sentiments remain alien to me. There is much work for me here, both in the completion of my report to His Majesty's government and in the business of commission which has been established for the purpose of reforming the King's army. Even so, perhaps I shall find a way to visit you on your estate. If nothing else, I may say that I am simply seeking out the opinion of an experienced officer on a military matter. I do believe that I shall make the attempt as soon as matters here are settled. Until then, I remain your obedient servant, Eleonora de All Wells, Countess Wells. A promise to visit, though little indication to when it might be kept. You suppose there is little you can do about it. Lady Wells still serves at the pleasure of His Majesty's government, and you are well familiar of how much of a mockery the exigencies of that service might make of any promise or oath. Best to move on for now. And I'm finished with personal correspondence for now. With your personal business dealt with, you go on to your other responsibilities, particularly the management of your estate. By your reckoning, your fief has lost 5 households, who have left in search of better opportunities elsewhere. The roads have at last been restored to a serviceable state, with the majority of the most grievous holes filled and the worst sections much improved. Though there will still be times in which the weather may render such passages impassable, normal travel through your fief should no longer seem like a form of torture, something which will no doubt benefit trade and the nerves of your tenants. In addition, you receive a letter from your bank informing you that, in light of your recent loan of 2,500 crowns, the interest rate on your debt has been increased by 3% to a total of 7%. You must take care not to increase your rates much further, and I won't. I'm going to only do one more project, and depending on how much money I have at that point, then I'll either put more money into my debts or keep it just for my debts, or I'll just, keep it. In addition, reports come to you that one of your tenants has announced the birth of a new foal, the first of the season. Despite what first appearances might have considered a difficult pregnancy and a fraught birth, the newborn animal now seems happy and healthy. The appearance of so miraculous a new life under such fraught circumstances has gone some distance in improving the mood of your tenants, giving them hope that they too may emerge from the current difficulties stronger and healthier. All right. So my current wealth is 2,950 crowns, but that's not going to be the case in the next half year. Also, I'm at 615. I'm at negative 615 crowns. So I'm going to have to do more in order to help that. Let's see. Let's write the bank regarding the matter of my loans. Let me see if I can try to renegotiate the interest on my loans. You write up a letter to your bankers requesting a lowering of the interest rate on your debt. You promise all sorts of guarantees regarding future repayment and attach references to any friend or ally who might possibly be able to speak in favor of your character, your integrity, and the stability of your finances. It is a risky proposition, especially given the prodigious size of your family's existing debts. It is hard enough a business to convince a banking house to give up some of their potential revenue, harder still when the scale of your obligations makes for so much of it. You send the letter off, now all you can do is wait for a reply. All right. And hopefully they'll look at the investments that I've made and say, okay, maybe we can lower the debt. Doubt it, but still worth a shot. Okay, let's do some more improvements on the village. Yeah, I'm kind of afraid to go ahead and pick on this because if I pick on this, I might not be able to come back to this. So I'll go ahead and do this again and just focus on actually doing that. Okay, and how much was it for the farmland? I think it was like 750. The roads is 2,500. Oh, wait. Oh, so you can do it multiple times. The roads of your fief are in good repair once again, but they are still the sort of narrow packed earth tracks which become seas of mud under the autumn rain and the spring snowmelt. However, you have heard of an ingenious new system of road building being used in some parts of the country, where a road bed of large stones is filled in with smaller ones before being sealed with gravel. It is said that such a technique might render roads entirely even and waterproof, though preliminary inquiries you have made seem to indicate that such a measure would be exceptionally expensive. 2,500 crowns. All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Okay. So I could improve the tenants or I could improve the farms. I'm still going to improve the farms. That's 500 crowns for the farms, and then I might do the tenants next after that. But again, I can't really spend too much money because I don't want to go completely broke. So, oh, and I can't even do it right now anyway. So, I'm guessing I don't have enough money. Yeah, I guess I don't have enough money, or maybe it's just too soon for it. Or maybe I don't have enough people. I don't know. Or maybe it just might be because of the demo or something like that. Let's see if we can make the land more suitable for farming. You make a note to set aside the appropriate funds and draft a call for workmen to be posted in the village. By the time summer begins, you should have the materials and labor necessary to begin work in earnest. Until then, all you can do is wait. All right. And I will finish managing my estate. Okay, and we're back to this again. I could do my recollections of my time at war. Go out and try and find something to get into, or I can endeavor to keep myself in fighting trim mentally and physically. So I'm guessing some of these stats are going to depreciate unless I actually do things to try and improve them. But I'm still going to try and keep up with my sister and my brother. Let's see, what do we have here? Okay, they're not on here. Affairs of state. Oh, we have a few affairs of state. Okay. And I'm guessing they're going backwards as they normally do, so I will read these. Yeah, that's the way they're going. So, from the bottom to the top. Under Takaran mediation, I was about to say meditation, mediation, peace negotiation betwixt the unified kingdom of Tierra and the League of Antar continue. A draft treaty begins to take shape. Confident that an official end to the war is soon to be at hand, Grenadier Square begins the return of the King's Army's regiments from Antar. Sporadic public demonstrations against the Crown's war taxation continues in Atoria and Tannisburg. That was in the spring of 613. In the summer, the news that the Crown's war taxes will be retained for at least another year triggers widespread demonstrations and disorder in major cities throughout the unified kingdoms. For his crucial role in winning the pivotal Second Battle of Carinthia, Sir Louis Auguste de All-Palliser is awarded a victory title by the king. He is now Viscount Palliser of Carinthia. The Tierran delegation to Antar, headed by the ailing Earl of Lianiscourt, reports that a peace agreement with terms generally in Tierra's favor has been drafted. Copies are sent to the Tierran courts and the Antari League Congress for ratification. In the autumn, the draft peace treaty is quickly ratified by the courts. The League Congress similarly agrees to the draft after a mere 9 weeks of deliberation. The war between Tierra and Antar is finally over. With the end of the war, the Royal Tierran Army is drawn down from wartime strength. The House Guard regiments are disbanded into their component forces, and the permanent regiments are placed on a peacetime footing, leaving tens of thousands of officers and men without work or on half pay. Displaced by the terms of the peace settlement and the vagaries of Antari politics, hundreds of thousands of Antari serfs leave or are removed from their homes. Many head for Tierra in hopes of rebuilding their lives. Destitute veterans and war refugees from the war in Antar become common sights on the streets of Tierran towns and cities, joining those impoverished and rendered homeless by the Crown's high taxes. Shunned by many communities, thousands freeze or starve to death through the winter. In desperation, some turn to theft and brigandage to survive. In Tannisburg and in Atoria, the Duke of Wolfram organized a relief program to bring food and warm clothing to the worst affected. Despite the best of intentions, it seemingly does little to alleviate the problem. Surprise. Thought Palliser would probably do something like that. With the arrival of spring, many groups of Antari refugees take to the countryside in search of work. Many find themselves met with hostility by distrustful locals who fear that their lords may evict them from their plots to replace them with the Antari. Faced with worsening brigandage in the country, increasing poverty and unrest in the cities, and widespread political opposition to his plans for reforming the army, the king calls the courts to draft this year's budget and hopefully strike a compromise with the Duke of Wolfram's increasingly powerful faction. And then in the summer of 614, during the first session of the courts, the Duke of Wolfram proposes a budget which calls for the reduction of the king's army, an end to war taxes, and a moratorium on spending for the next 5 years. He does this without the king's approval, an unheard of act of defiance against the crown's authority and conventions of the courts. It is defeated on the court's floor by a narrow margin. The first session of the Army Reform Commission meets in Atoria. Comprised mostly of veteran army officers, the commission seeks to use the lessons learned from the war in Antar to reform the king's army into a more effective force. Already, voices in the courts are denouncing it as a wasteful expenditure in a time of fiscal crisis. God, I regret not going to the Capitol. It probably would have really benefited me if I went to the Capitol, but I was a little worried because of them talking about like how if you go to the Capitol, then things back at home might not improve as quickly. Yeah, that might have been a bad decision. One which I will rectify in the full game. Alright, let's try to continue to get closer to my brother and sister. Okay, so it's the same. It's not the same thing. At times, your attempts to build a closer relationship with your siblings seem like a course of self-destruction. After all, it is not they who insist on your company, day after day, evening after evening, when you could be doing more profitable things. It was you who chose to face your sister's sharp tongue and your brother's discomforting looks. It was you who chose this fruitless task. At least surviving Blasius had come with a knighthood. Yet even so, there are moments when your sister's facet of hostility cracks or your brother's standoffishness wanes. more of them as the weeks pass and you begin to grow accustomed to each other's company. They are almost disconcerting in their rarity and subtlety, but you cherish them all the same. They are the only proof that you are making any progress at all. All right. You are eating lunch one late summer day when you are quite suddenly interrupted by one of your footmen, a hurried look on his face. Apologies, my lord, he reports as he bows low. Master Sundersley begs pardon to inform you that there is a situation of some delicacy in the village and that your presence is required immediately. You put down your fork and eye the man carefully. You would rather not like to head out until the heat of the midday unless you absolutely have to. A situation, you ask. What sort of situation, pray tell? The footman shakes his head. I do not know, my lord. It only bade me to say that it was urgent and that it must be addressed without delay. So without delay it is, then. You throw on your coat and saddle up your horse and ride down the path to the village, only to find Saundersley coming up the road the other way. Saints be praised, your solicitor exclaims as you pull up next to him. We must move quickly, or else I fear that this whole affair shall be entirely beyond our control. You look down your saddle. I have still not yet been informed of the specifics of the affair. Might you at least tell me what has you in such a state of excitement? Sandersley's expression turns grim. Pray, my lord, let us hurry to the village square, then. It will be best if you saw for yourself. Oh, I think I remember this. This might be helpful, actually. The market square of Roomberg village is already packed with people when you arrive. It seems that most of the population of your fief is there. Yet instead of the noise and general hullabaloo, which might be expected of a gathering of several hundred, the crowd is almost entirely silent, quite nearly still. The normal business of the market has ceased entirely, and those present seem only content to converse with each other in hushed whispers and looks of utmost suspicion. When the crowds part to let you through, you quickly realize why. In the center of the square stands a half-dozen wretched-looking figures, 4 men and 2 women. The ragged remnants of what had once been homespun hangs on their wasted frames. Some watch the hostile crowd around them apprehensively, their limbs trembling from either fear or mere hunger. Others turn to you as you approach them, their expressions plaintive on their hunger-sunken faces. What you do not know what gives them away first. Perhaps it's the hints of pale skin that still show under their angry red sunburns, or the straw-colored hair which hangs from their heads, limp and unwashed. Or perhaps it is because you recognize a word or two as they whisper nervously to each other. These folks are Antari. They arrived about half an hour ago, Sandersley says, as you get off your horse. The crowd started gathering soon after. You look around the square. They seem tense. Sandersley's eyes narrow. Forgive my frankness, my lord, but I dare say that they have a right to be. A band of dirty, starving, unkempt ruffians straggle into town capable of speaking naught but foreign gibberish. Surely that is reason for apprehension. Then it is perhaps we put their apprehensions to rest, you answer, before continuing towards the middle of the square. One of the Antari stepped forward. He had been a big man once, but hunger had shrunken him to a little more than skin stretched over a skeleton. His eyes dart from side to side like a cornered animal's. His shoulders hunch over, as if he was trying to make himself as small as possible. He addresses you in a thick-tongued voice. It is Antari, to be sure. You recognize, or at least you think you recognize, a word or two, but no more than that. And I'm guessing if you studied Antari in the last game, this is going to actually come in handy. You turn to Sandersley. I don't suppose you have any Antari, do you? The man before you looks quizzically at you for a moment, his brows furrowed. When next he speaks, it is with considerable effort and in a broken, halting Tieran. Southman Master? You? You nod. I have the honor to be lord of this village, yes. Suddenly the Antari is on his knees, prostrating himself before you, his voice quivering with fear. I, Tomas, not know Southman ways. Forgive? It takes you a moment to realize that the man before you is begging your forgiveness for not groveling before you sooner. His fear, you suppose, is understandable in Antar. A serf could be impaled for not showing the proper respect to one of his bane-blooded masters. But you are not in Antar. There's no need for that, you reply hastily. Pray, stand up and tell me why you have come here. The man, Tomas, looks up hesitantly, as if expecting a trap. You must repeat yourself before he finally gets up off his knees, shaking with nerves. I beg help, master, he replies. Many day, no food. He pulls up his tattered shirt, revealing a set of ribs poking out of his shrunken belly. Beg help for them, he waves at the others with him, and for many other too. You mentioned many others. How many? Where are they? Others wait up road, master, Tomas replies quickly. Not want offend, master, by bring all. Your eyes narrow. And how many is all exactly? Tomas frowns. When snow melt, almost 10 tens families. He says carefully. Now, 8 tens, maybe 7? You mean to tell me that you have lost a quarter of your number since the beginning of spring? You ask in disbelief. How can such a thing even be possible? The Antari lets out a long sigh. No food, no coin, he answers despondently. No rest, no hope. Well, we did have some families leave, so we do have some space, and I do need taxable people that can work. What exactly do you need in particular? Tomas stares back incomprehendingly. You try again, taking care to speak as slowly as possible. How do I help you? The Antari takes a moment to find the words. No food, no hearth, master, he replies despondently. No food, we die. Is it food you require then? You ask. Perhaps some could be made available. Tomas shakes his head, his brows furrowed in frustration. No hearth, winter come, we die, he answers slowly, carefully. You nod. Tierran winters are not a patch on Antari ones, but they will kill a man easily enough if he's forced to wander the countryside without food or shelter. Need hearth, need food, the Antari tries again. Master give hearth, we make food, we live. Now you understand. It is not food that they require, but land to grow it on and a fire to cook it over. What he and his companions are asking for is a home. How exactly did a group of Antari serfs end up here anyway? The Antari shakes his head. He has clearly not understood. You try again. Where are you from, you ask. Korobirit, Tomas answers. Old master go to war. Tomas go with. Southmen take. That does little to answer your question. In fact, it only seems to give rise to a new one. The war is over, you reply. If you are taken prisoner by the king's army, why did they not return you to Korobirit? Tomas shrugs. Master takes serf. Serf belong to master. You've heard something of the like before. That when an Antari serf fighting for one lord is captured by another, he becomes his captive's chattel. It is a cruel system, but you suppose it is what you would expect of the Antari. By all intents and purposes, Tomas became the king's property the instant he was captured. One day Southmen came, or come, the former serf continues. He say war over. Tomas no master. You find your eyes narrowing. If you were set free in Antar at the end of the war, why would you come here, you demand? Would you rather not be free in your own country? Tomas shakes his head vehemently. No master, not free. No master, be outlaw. No master equals death. He lets out a sigh. They say this is not so in Southland. So live or die, we choose live. So that is the choice which brought this man and his fellow to Tierra, to be hunted down like animals by the lords of his homeland, or to seek their fortune in a strange and hostile country. You dare say you would have made the same choice as he did. Yet even so, it has not been easy for them. You can see that well enough in their sunken eyes, their ragged clothes, their hunger-shrunken bellies. You've had a hard time of it, you observe, perhaps a little redundantly. The Antari nods sadly. Winter very hard. Blue priests help. Never enough. Many die. He replies dully. Spring come. Look food. No find food. Many die. Next winter come. He lets out a sigh. His eyes despondent. Next winter come. All die. Well, I'm going to ask Sandersley what's his opinion on this, but I'm going to actually go ahead and receive them because one, there were families that left. We need people to come in and actually work the land and stuff like that. We may have to let them slide on taxes for a little bit just so they can get back up to snuff, but we got some money. We can kind of afford it for a little bit, at least for them to kind of at least regain some type of footing, and then they'll pay it back. Sandersley, what do you think? Your solicitor turns to you with a strained look. I feel for these people, my lord. I really do. The ordeals that they have suffered through. He shakes his head sadly. But these people are not your tenants, and you are not their lord, he continues. Times are hard for everyone, and it is your responsibility to make them easier for those who live on your land and pay their rents before anyone else. He gestures at the tense, silent crowd all around you. Look at their faces, my lord. They know that every penny you spend to give charity to these foreigners will be a penny which will have to be taken out of their rents. The rents they pay so that you may maintain their cottages and repair their roads and ensure that the crops make it to the market. In a matter like this, your people must come first before anyone else's, no matter how desperate they may seem. These people will die if we do not help them, you reply, more than a little appalled at your solicitor's cold-blooded reasoning. Sandersley looks back at the band of starving Antari before you, his lips taut. He lets out a sigh. Then offer aid to those worst afflicted, my lord. Those with small children, perhaps. I cannot in good conscience advise you to help all of them, but if we must help some, let it be those who need it the most. I mean, his reasoning is reasonable, but at the same time, we need people. We need people that's going to turn around and work our lands and stuff like that. And if they're willing to come here, if we can let them slide for a little bit, that pays off in the end. So it pays to turn around and have these people come in, help out with things, and maybe even introduce us to new things that they've learned in the process. The crowd falls silent as your words echo over the square. Even the whispered muttering among your tenants suddenly stops. All eyes turn to you now. As a baron speaking in your own fiefdom, your decision is as good as a ruling. I mean to feed and shelter all who need it at my own expense. That is more than likely what I'm going to do. I can offer food and shelter, but only for those who need it most. I will provide food and shelter to those who pay for it. We cannot afford to offer charity in these hard times. Yeah, I'm just going to do it at my own expense for right now. Worst case scenario, I'll take out a loan. Tomas is almost effused with joy. When he conveys your ruling to his companions, they are no less pleased. One of them even tries to kiss your hand, held back only by the arms of his fellows. Sandersley does not appear to agree. His attention is more focused on your tenants and at the dirty looks they shoot at both the Antari and at you. I will fight all of you. Probably wouldn't be successful, but I will fight all of you. There will be trouble for this, my lord, he warns you. I would advise you prepare accordingly. They start coming in over the afternoon. What seems like hundreds of them, men, women, and children. They carry only the ragged clothes on their back and a few pathetic bundles of worldly possessions. More than a few can only be carried by their fellows, their bodies trembling with coughing fits. Others are all but covered in bites and sores and infected wounds. Behind them travel a small cloud of insects, nesting in their ragged clothes, in their filthy hair, and in their scanty packs. Your tenants watch them come. As each new, bedraggled group of refugees arrives, you can see their mood grow uglier. Their hostility is all but open now, and it is not just directed at the newcomers. They blame for bringing these people into their community, and if things go poorly, it is you who they will blame for that as well. The next few days pass in a state of constant activity in helping the new arrivals get settled into their homes and making arrangements to have them fed and intending for the worst afflicted. It is perhaps this last task which is most taxing, for not all of those who arrive prove strong enough to recover from their long ordeal. There are 3 deaths in the first night, all of them children. 6 more follow over the next few days. One little girl from eating more than her wasted belly could accept, her guts bursting from sudden plenty after months of starvation. pyres are duly made for them. At least that is the practice familiar to both your people. The families of the dead gather in miserable clumps around them as they burn to ash, still too exhausted to weep. You cannot help but feel for them, and take comfort in the fact that, thanks to you, they shall not have to burn a child ever again. Is that wise? Your mother asks as you relate the events of the day to her over dinner. I understand that the decision has already been made, but allowing so many people to stay on our lands when things are already so precarious. Your sister nods quietly in agreement. Your brother almost opens his mouth to object. Almost. They needed our help, you insist. Your mother gives you a nod, a grudging one, but a nod nonetheless. Then I hope you've a better sense of the matter than I. You nod back. So do you. Things seem to improve over the course of the next week. Steady diet and reliable shelter seem to do wonders for the Antari. The deaths stop, and as the days pass, you can see once gaunt bodies once again begin to bear flesh. Even your tenants seem to be making an effort not to cause trouble with the new arrivals, their sense of pity likely overriding their sense of suspicion. After a few days, mutual avoidance even begins to give way to a few tentative attempts at communication, albeit ones much restricted by the newcomer's rudimentary grasp of Tieran. Matters seem to settle into a pattern as things quiet down and your tenants begin to grow accustomed to their new neighbors. For a while, you even dare to consider the crisis past and Saundersley's warnings mere hyperbole. It is not much later that you are proven wrong. I was approached by a group of Antari this morning, Saundersley reports to you, not a week later. They were quite distraught. Your brow furrows. Has another died? You ask, your voice tinged with worry. I must arrange for the construction of a fresh funeral pyre at once. Your solicitor shakes his head. I fear it is nothing so simple resolve as that, my lord, he replies resignedly. They came to me because they have finally noticed that there is no statue of the Mother of Ascension in the village shrine. It seems that they consider themselves greatly in need of their own place of worship. Oh, that is a problem. The Antari worship the saints, just as you do. However, when you and almost all Tierans were brought up in the Mercodian rite, the Antari adhere to their own version of the faith. In their Ascensionist rite, the saintly martyrs are not elevated by the force of their own deeds and the vigils of their followers. Instead, they are chosen for sainthood by the Mother of Ascension, a figure with no equivalent in your own version of saints' worship. In short, the new arrivals to your fief follow a religion which is just familiar enough for any good saints revering Tieran to recognize as utterly heretical. I could order a second shrine built, you muse, pay for the work and materials myself if necessary. Saundersley shakes his head. I would advise against it, my lord, he replies grimly. The Antari will no doubt be grateful, but I fear your tenants will see the situation quite differently. They will see you as bending over backwards to champion the followers of foreign heresy. They would certainly disapprove. Your solicitor has a point. You will win no friends among your longtime tenants by accommodating the new arrivals and their faith. But if you are to deny the Antari even the ability to worship the saints in the manner in which they are accustomed to, what possible impetus would they have to accommodate themselves in return? If the Antari refugees are to become a permanent part of your fief's population, then you shall have to make allowances for them. It will most certainly raise the ire of your tenants, but perhaps that is a sacrifice you must be willing to take. Oof. I shall give the Antari a space to worship, but I'll not build them a shrine. How much money do I have? I have 2,225 crowns. And how much is this costing me? That's kind of the one thing I would like to know. How much is this all costing me? What is the barony of Runeberg? Respectability is at 28%, prosperity is at 32%, contentment is at 42%. Manor. Being a country house of middling size and very poor condition, encompassed by a low stone fence in a state of much disrepair, outbuildings include stables, coach house, and a guardhouse, all in exceptionally poor condition. Interior consists of 18 rooms, including 6 bedrooms, a kitchen, a library, a small ballroom, a dovecote, and a gun room. The estate grounds, being a barony a barony of middling size composed of a manor house, market village, and surrounding fields and hinterlands. It is located a week's ride from the port of Crittenden, a journey rendered easier by the fine state of local roads. The village of Roomburg is a small hamlet possessed of a traveler's inn, a public house, a somewhat worn shrine to the major saints, and an open market square. The surrounding cottages are few in number and in very poor condition, having been in a state of disrepair for some time. A number of fields lie adjacent to the village, but much arable land is wasted for want of proper clearance, in which we are actually working on right now. Okay, so we're back to 135, so that's nice. Okay. But that's negative 615. Need to do something about that. And our debts is at 1800. All right. I'll allocate the funds to build a new shrine. I think that'll be best, or will it? No, that might be a bit much because I mean, I haven't even fixed the shrine that's actually here. So yeah, yeah, I'll give them a place to worship, but I won't build them a shrine. Yeah, because that wouldn't be fair to my residents. Because I mean, again, I haven't even built on the shrine here. If I had built on the shrine, then it would be fair, but I haven't. So I'll give the Antari a space to worship, but I'll not build them a shrine. Sandersley nods, but with a hesitant uncertainty. Perhaps that would be wise, my lord. This way, you may allow the Antari a place to follow their own faith without seeming to show them unreasonable preferment. He nods again, this time more sure of himself. Yes, my lord. A sensible compromise. I'm sure all would agree. Unfortunately, they don't. Your tenants grumble when you make the announcement that an open space outside the village is to be made available to the newcomers to practice the rites of their own country. To them, it seems as if the very action of allowing these foreigners and their heretical religion any accommodation at all is unreasonable enough a level of preferment. As for the Antari, it is not long before they too become dissatisfied with the arrangement. You have given them a place to worship, but no protection so that they may worship in peace. To practice their faith in the open is to be subject to the harassment of your tenants, who make free to heap jeers and ridicule on the newcomers and their foreign religion at what seems like every opportunity. More than once, they petition you for the funds to build a proper shrine, but you've already made your decision and you mean to stick to it. The petitions go unheeded. You wash your hands of the whole mess. All right, Pontius. Yet before long, you are beset by yet more complaints, this time from your tenants. It's intolerable, it is, declares the leader of one group, bold enough to deliver their complaint in person. The shrine's practically about to topple over on account of neglect. Our children have to walk 2 villages over to learn to read, and instead of doing something about it, you're handing out free food and board to a lot of foreign savages who can't even speak our language. I understand you have frustrations, you reply as calmly as you can, but surely you exaggerate. Your tenant's brows knit in anger. He snorts like a maddened bull. Exaggerations, he all but shouts. By Saint Octavius' bouncing tits, it is the truth is what it is. A rumble of agreement rises from the half-dozen figures gathered behind him. Stout men and women whose families have lived on your lands for decades, if not centuries. My wife's brother fought for his king in Antar as you did, my lord, rumbles a second man as he steps forward. He's got no work and he's got 3 little sisters and his old widowed mum to look after. He could use a free cottage, and I'm sure his daughters could use the free food. The anger in his voice rises. So what makes that pack of foreigners more deserving of your charity than him? Can you at least answer me that, my lord? I wish I had a better way of saying something like this. I wouldn't go that far, but I would remind people that I was at some of the bloodiest battles and everything else in between. So don't even for a second think that I don't understand, what was in the war and what, they're facing and everything like that. But you have to have faith in me. That's something that I would like to say. Not so much you're not entitled to an explanation. I mean to raise Runeberg to new heights of prosperity. The Antari are key to that. All due respect, my lord, replies one of your tenants with a tone that implies anything but. 'Twas us who built the prosperity of this place. Well, it looks like shit now. Us and our forefathers, not some pack of foreign curs who don't even know how to worship the saints proper. That's very funny considering most of the houses that I came back to are complete shit. The roads are in complete dishevelment. Most of the fields are also in complete dishevelment. So if you and your forefathers built this, my God, they fucked up. You and yours, you reply, baiting your rhetorical trap with false skepticism. I was under the impression that it was my family who built the roads, who cleared the market square and raised the shrine. And it was our rents that you and your families done it with, he replies immediately. If we weren't here, you wouldn't be able to afford none of this. The other tenants nod in agreement. You have them now. You nod back. You're absolutely right, You answer with a smile of reassurance. The prosperity of this fief relies on its tenants. Should some of you decide to leave, I would quickly find myself unable to maintain those institutions which ensure its current state for want of rents. Whereas if I wanted to do more, build something greater, your tenants look at each other worriedly. Yes, perhaps that. These men are not gentlemen of the blood. There is little embarrassment in discussing money with those so inferior to you in status. Yet to them it must be a strange thing indeed to hear a lord of the court speak so frankly about money. Like a butcher explaining how sausage is made, you must assume. But one proves more intrepid or simply more clear-headed than the others. Then you'd need more of us. A lot more. Like, you cannot resist smiling now. Like a large group of entire refugees, perhaps? Your tenants are truly perplexed now. They stare at you as if you had somehow managed to conjure a live puppy into your hands. But my lord, one of them replies, the Antari don't pay rents. They will, you answer, when they have learned our customs and our language. When they know our way of doing things. I mean to charge them no less rent than the rest of you. With the rent added to that which you already pay, this barony's prosperity shall be assured. You look them in the eye, each and every one. The world is changing, you continue. Even in your own country, men are making wonders the like of which we have never seen before. It brings with it the promise of wealth and plenty, the likes of which none of us have ever seen before. I mean to fulfill that promise, to ensure the futures of my children and yours. To do so, I need to take the opportunities I am given. For that, are you with me? You all but whisper, are you with me? Your attendants look to each other. One or two look away, their expressions still obstinate. The rest look back to you, and slowly, hesitantly, they nod. The harvesting season brings you a few weeks of quiet. Your tenants have no time to issue complaints or make petitions. They're far too busy bringing in the year's crops for that. You realize the peace as much as you relish the peace as much as you can, nurturing the hope that it will last. Once winter begins, both newcomers and old residents will be too confined in their own cottages to make trouble for each other. Maybe the time apart will moderate their enmity towards each other. In the meantime, there is something to look forward to as well. The High Harvest is one of the few festivals genuinely celebrated throughout the whole of the unified kingdom, and for a rural barony like yours, it is certainly the most important. It is a much-needed respite at the height of the harvest season, a day of feasting, dancing, drinking, and relaxation after long weeks of unrelenting toil. It is a chance for young men and women to meet and socialize, and for the whole village to revel in displays of civic pride for a day before reassuming the hard job of finishing the harvest. Needless to say, the common people of Runeberg take the matter quite seriously. Already you can see the strands of orange bunting going up around the village square, the cask of ale and lager being stockpiled for the celebration, and the beginnings of the stand upon which the pillars of the community are to address the gathered revelers. It is the last of those preparations which is the cause of your newest anxieties. Last year, you had arrived just 2 weeks after the end of High Harvest, and as such, you had been able to avoid discharging the duty which your station as Baron Runeberg would have required of you. This year, you have no such luck. This year, you shall have to give a speech. Any other year, and you would have had little material to build an address upon. Perhaps a note in praise of hard work here, an uplifting folk proverb there, all tied off with a few words about the promise of the upcoming year. The empty platitudes of a country baron ruling over a land without danger or crisis. But there is crisis aplenty this year. With tensions betwixt your tenants and the Antari as high as they are, you have a chance for your words to have a real impact. All attendant will be listening carefully for any indication of your plans for the months ahead. You have a real chance to lay the foundations of a mutual understanding between the two hostile parties within your fief, to begin the process of binding two peoples into one. As the days grow shorter and the high harvest approaches, you begin to prepare for what could be the first great challenge of your time as Baron Runeberg. Your tenants have truly outdone themselves for this year's high harvest. The village square blazes with light and heat and noise as the whole population of your fief eat and laugh and drink under a canopy of orange bunting and the light of 100 paper lanterns. To know that your people might be capable of such works is a thought fit to fill you with pride. Before you, the festivities are at their height and progressing well by all accounts and purposes. The melodies of fiddles and flutes waft over the square, mixing with the sound of joyful voices. Dancers spin and twirl to the music as those around them clap their hands to the beat and shout encouragement. Even the Antari are here, a few intrepid youths ranging forth from the company of their own families to mingle with your native-born tenants. The tensions of the last few weeks seems to have been forgotten entirely. Yet as you sit atop the central platform, waiting for Saundersley to announce you so that you may give your address, you cannot help but be full of anxieties. You repeat the memorized words over and over again in your head, feeling faintly ridiculous as you do so. Public speaking has never been your strong suit, but you have done it far worse situations than this, and without the benefit of a speech pre-written for you. Surely, the festive air is rent by a girl's scream, high and shrill. "Get him!" someone shouts. The bottom of your stomach falls out as the square collapses into chaos. If you were a sensible man, you'd be trying to get as far away from the commotion as you could. Indeed, plenty of sensible men are trying to get as much distance between them and the violent thrashing mass of human limbs and bodies as they can. But you are the lord of this fief. These are your people and your responsibilities. So grimly, reluctantly, you push into the crowd. "Make way," someone shouts, Saundersley huffing and puffing to keep up. "Make way for the lordship." Slowly, grudgingly, the crowd begins to part, settling into stillness and silence as you make your way to the source of the disturbance. You see a boy of perhaps 15 or 16, one of the Antari, his face bruised and swollen, his nose beat crooked, his eyes wide with fear, a thin trickle of blood issuing from his mouth full of broken teeth. Two of your tenants hold him by the arms, both pinning him back and holding him up. A second boy, a Tieran already swaying with drink, stares the Antari down. His expression contorted with rage, his fist clenched and already dripping with blood, which is quite obviously not his. "What is the meaning of this?" you bellow as you step forward. The second boy waves a bloody fist at his evident victim. "He had it coming, my lord. After what he tried to do, a beating the least he deserves." Jesus. Those around him offer a chorus of muttered agreement. And what did he try to do exactly? The boy points his other hand at a young woman, again perhaps 16. "He tried to make free with my sister, that's what," he declares, as he draws himself up to his full height. "I had to protect their honor, my lord." A noble sentiment, you suppose, though given the bloody scene before you, you rather suppose he may not be telling the whole story. The crowd is returning, more and more cram themselves in by the moment, drawn in by the drama evidently unfolding before you. You see some of the Antari too, their eyes fixed anxiously on their bloodied countrymen. Tensions fill the air like a warm, suffocating mist. Saints above, why tonight of all nights? Any other time, and you could have had at least the day to come to a decision, or taken measures to contain the incident. But there is no chance of that now, with the population of the entire fief crowded around you. Any ruling you make will be weighed immediately against the sentiments of a half-drunk, anxious throng. There is no time to investigate, no time to deliberate. No matter how you will decide, some part of them is likely to be angered. It is a decision that must be made under the worst possible circumstances, but it is a decision that must be made now. I must question the Antari boy. The crowd mutters angrily to each other as you approach the bleeding young man. He strains to look up to you as his body sags in the grip of his captors, ragged breaths passing through his torn, half-parted lips. What happened here, you ask. The boy looks up to you, only half comprehending. Here, you repeat, slower this time. What happened? A noise comes from the back of the boy's throat, wet and raspy and quiet, too quiet to be heard over the voices of the crowd. You lean in closer until you can smell the iron salt stink of the blood. Please, he rattles, louder this time, his eyes flicking to the girl still staring wide-eyed at the entire terrible scene. Please, I only wanted... We know what he wanted, the bastard, his attacker interjects, his voice cracking with outrage. We've known all along. First they come to our homes, then they come for our lands, now they come for our womenfolk. We've proof now, and I ain't going to let it go unanswered. All right, calm down. You can see some in the crowd nod their heads at those words. Not many. Some only look on in silence while others shake their heads in disapproval. Perhaps they have finally started coming to their senses. There's no help coming, he continues, his voice shrill with anger. If we want to keep our folks safe, we got to do it ourselves. If that is enough, sirrah. Saunderslay's voice cracks like a pistol shot. The boy's words fail him. The crowd falls silent. You are not lord of this village. This is not your decision to make, nor is it mine. He turns to you, his face flushed with anger and creased with worry. It is yours, my lord. I pray you make the right one. Well, I'm not going to throw out the Antari, so that's obvious. Oh boy, this is tough. This is tough. And we can't question anybody else. We can't question the girl or anything like that. We just have to make a decision after we talk to him and hear the words of the kid. Well, I'm pretty sure there's more to it than that. I'm pretty sure that this drunk bastard is just a douche. And there's just a massive misunderstanding. A man has been assaulted. The perpetrator must pay compensation. A wave of dismay rolls over the crowd. As for the perpetrator himself, he can only goggle open-mouthed in shock. You eye the victim's injuries carefully. I do not see any broken limbs. You lean in closer. Can you hear me, boy? Can you see me? The young Antari nods weakly. An assault without permanent injury, you conclude before turning into Saundersley. I believe 4 and 6 is considered a customary fine for such an offense. Now it is the turn of the boy's assailant to go wide-eyed with fear. For a man of your station, 4 crowns and 6 dams is a pittance, the sort of money you can lose over a single round of Tassenwort. For a family of a tenant farmer, it could be the better part of a year's income. Please, my lord, he suddenly protests. Actions have consequences, you reply, with as much kindness as you can muster. It is a lesson best learned young. Be thankful that you have paid the tuition in money, and not your life or reputation. You turn to the crowd. That goes for all of you, you add in a tone which does not invite further argument. Further such incidents shall not be tolerated. You let out a sigh, feeling far more weary than you have any right to be. This matter is settled. I'll not hear any more of it. Alrighty then. Now we have our first major incident that we've had to deal with. The square quiets down quickly, but it does not revive again. The joyous atmosphere of just a few minutes before seems as distant as a childhood memory. There is only an air of ominous tension where there had once been laughter and music, smothering on all present like a black fog so thick that even the ruddy glow of the lanterns cannot dispel it. A brave few make feeble attempts to reignite the festivities, but the naked, bitter violence which has marred this evening has stained it beyond salvaging. The music dies. The vain attempts at conversations fall silent. Your tenants return to their homes, silent and sullen, taking the last vestiges of the harvest feast with them, leaving only forlorn links of orange cloth, empty tables, and dimming lanterns behind. It seems nobody is in much of a mood to celebrate anything anymore. Thankfully, no more incidents follow the one which had marred the High Harvest Festival. With the first frost of winter just a few weeks away, your tenants are far too busy getting in the last harvest to cause any new trouble. Things almost return to a state of what might be called normalcy. The days grow shorter and colder. A courier from the city arrives with mail and the summer's back copies of the Gazette. It does not make for encouraging reading. There are high tensions in the courts. Evidently, the Duke of Wolfram has gone so far as to propose his own budget without the assent of the Crown or the Esquire, an unprecedented move. There is turmoil in the country as well. The woods are overrun with roadsmen. The roads themselves are choked with refugees, both from Antar and from the villages and towns which can no longer support them. It seems the realm has had its fair share of crisis while you were busy dealing with your own. You can only thank the saints that so few of them have affected you in your remote seat thus far. Soon, distant events are driven from your mind by more pressing concerns. With the harvest over, rents are now due, and you are once again set to the task of administrating your estate. All right, so we have had our first major incident to deal with. I don't know if we dealt with it properly, but we did a thing. We did a thing. That's the best I can say out of that. Hopefully, perhaps, I don't know. Hopefully things will turn back to normal at some point, and hopefully we can still benefit from this, and hopefully our beef can come together and everything. We'll just have to wait and see. But hopefully it was just an isolated incident and we won't have anything else like that. But I'm sure there are going to be many problems to continue forward. I'm glad at the very least that I was actually here to deal with this. I don't know if I would have been able to deal with this if I was away. I'm pretty sure that my family would have just dealt with it one way or the other, or depending on who was in charge. I'm also a little bit apprehensive of our little helper guy, Saundersley. He's helpful, but at the same time, I feel like he's a little bit, I don't know. All I can say is he's helpful to a degree. He's not like Lanzaro. I feel like Lanzaro gives me the best advice in the situation. He's seen enough of everything to give me the best advice. On the other, but with Sandusroll, whatever his name is, he's helpful as so long as you understand his perspective of things. So he can be problematic when it comes to giving advice. You have to keep that in mind, that he's going to give you the best possible advice for the people in his situation. He's not going to give you the best possible advice. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. But that's also one thing I like about this, is that you can't really rely on, everyone. Everyone has kind of their own opinions and certain things like that. You can rely on it to a point. That's also one thing that I kind of disliked to a certain degree about Suzerain, was that while I love the story. I love the story. I love the gameplay. It is by far the best political simulation, if you want to call it that, or the best political game that I've ever played. Period. I have no complaints with that in any form or fashion. The only thing I didn't like about it, though, to a certain degree, was that when it came to the people around you, you had the best. Like, you were literally in the perfect situation. You had the best advisors. You had the best possible people. Now, did they have their own, agendas and stuff like that? Of course they did. But for the most part, every single person was literally the best at what they were doing. You had the best justice minister in Nia Morgana. You had Lilius, who was also very popular and the best. You had the best vice president, besides the fact that he was a womanizer and everything else in between. You had the best economic advisor, who had connections and ties to the most powerful people in Swordland and everything. But you had the best military advisors in Isof Lanki and stuff like that. Now your choices, of course, would depend upon your choices would of course affect things after that, but you had the best advice around you, and just in reality that's not going to happen. So it's nice to be in a situation where you have to kind of be on your toes, because everybody has an agenda in this, but also they're not going to give you the best advice. They're going to give you the best opinion that they have. So that's just a little reminder of that. And I kind of miss that about these choice of games, where you have these situations where you're not going to have the best advice and the best people available around you and stuff like that. Everybody in Suzerain was just shifty, but they were the best people. And if you agreed with them, then it was the right decision if you agreed with their line of thinking and stuff like that. But if you didn't, then they were still the best people, but they just, they might screw you over in the end and stuff like that. So anywho, that's just my thoughts about that. So, but yes, we will go ahead and pick up things in the next episode, and we will see what is happening and see if we can perhaps maybe go to the capital now, because I think if the situation does arise again, I will go ahead and go to the capital, because we need to get involved in some bigger things. We need to get involved with the whole Gehring situation. Maybe we can do that. Still, we need to get involved with the Countess, so hopefully we can do that. And hopefully we can still get involved with the whole army reform thing too. I'm pretty sure that would have some power, and since we're a pretty high-ranking officer, maybe that would help. I think we're a major in this. Yeah, we're a major. So I think in Guns of Infinity, if you have enough money, you can purchase the lieutenant colonel rank, which I'm assuming that if you have the lieutenant colonel rank, that would probably make you more likely to get into the whole make you be able to get into the whole committee thing. Also, I can see that my intellect went down. Interesting. My intellect went down, but my charisma, oh no, my charisma is still the same. Interesting. Why is my intellect going down? I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know what affects that. I'm assuming that I'm gonna have to take some time off. To, like, when I have my spare time, I can't just go ahead and focus on my sisters and stuff, on my sister and my brother. I'm also going to have to focus on my own abilities too at some point, but gonna have to keep an eye on that. I think I'm okay for right now, and I'm assuming that if that's the case for this, then hopefully when I move my actual save, where everything is about a 70 and a 50, that'll put me in a much better situation as opposed to this, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to pass any checks with this. But anywho, if you like the video, If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. I have a lot of things on my channel, and I will have many other things in the future as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave it in the comment section, and I will get to it as soon as possible. And also, if you have any video game suggestions, feel free to leave it in the comment sections as well. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I will take a look at it, give you my thoughts on it, and if it's something that fits for the channel, I will definitely go ahead and play it. So yeah, that is the end of this, and in the next episode we will see what's going down with the rest of the Unified Kingdom. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.